A 5-year-old girl in North Carolina was suspended from school after she made a shooting motion with a stick that was shaped like a gun. Caitlin Miller was playing kings and queens at recess last week, and her mission was to protect the Royals. So she picked up a gun-shaped stick, and according to Hokie County Schools, Caitlin posed a threat to other students when she made a shooting motion, thus violating policy 4331. Caitlin's mother, Brandy, says her daughter was alienated by her friends and teachers as a result of the suspension and hopes the school will apologize. But at the moment, the staff stands by their decision. The school issued a statement saying, Hoke County Schools will not tolerate assaults, threats, or harassment from any student.
A storm system blamed for the death of a truck driver in Oklahoma barreled eastward Wednesday, generating a tornado in Houston and threatening additional bad weather in the central United States. The day after, 3 storm chasers died in a collision as they raced toward a tornado-warned storm in West Texas. The Storm Prediction Center said 17 million people from Missouri to Louisiana risk seeing twisters, hail, and high winds on Wednesday, and even greater threat exists Thursday in northern Mississippi and western Tennessee.
4 people were killed and nearly 200,000 customers were left without power on Wednesday morning after powerful storms pounded Texas and Oklahoma, bringing tornadoes, torrential rain, and hail to the majority of both states. The system squashed utilities in North Texas, where provider Encore said about 150,000 of its customers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area were without power on Wednesday morning. The storms didn't ground any flights, however. It did create a number of closures in schools across Texas from Dallas to Fort Worth.
California prosecutors have charged the 2 undercover journalists with 15 felonies. The journalists produced videos of Planned Parenthood officials allegedly selling the harvested body parts of aborted babies for a profit. The Office of State Attorney General Xavier Becerra is alleging that David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt of the Center for Medical Progress recorded 14 individuals connected to the abortion and fetal tissue industries in Los Angeles, Pasadena, San Francisco, and El Dorado without their consent. The explosive videos of the individuals allegedly discussing how they obtained the highest quality fetal body parts during abortions in order to maximize sales to biotech companies rocked the nation and set off multiple congressional investigations into the abortion and fetal tissue procurement industries.
The collapse of the Republican healthcare overhaul was a sharp setback for anti-abortion leaders whose hopes of halting federal funding to Planned Parenthood were derailed. But they continue to pursue that goal and also are pushing for a federal ban on most abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. David Osteen, executive director of the National Right to Life Committee, acknowledged the mood of disappointment in the anti-abortion movement after last week's drama in the House of Representatives during the health care repeal failure.
The national census is an important tool for how and where we allocate resources, and an initial proposal for the next census in 2020 included, for the first time, questions about sexual orientation and gender identity. However, those questions were removed from the final report delivered to Congress on Tuesday, which many are taking as a sign of erasure of the LGBT community. This means that valuable data that could lead to more protections for the LGBT community won't be collected.
This week, 2 anti-abortion activists were charged in the state of California with multiple felonies for filming workers at Planned Parenthood centers without consent. The pair, David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt, posed as representatives of a fake company seeking to buy fetal tissue. According to California State Attorney General Xavier Becerra, Daleiden and Merritt have been charged with 15 felonies for illegally filming healthcare workers from October 2013 to July 2015. In a statement, Becerra added, "The right to privacy is a cornerstone of California's Constitution and a right that is foundational in a free democratic society. We will not tolerate the criminal recording of confidential conversations."
A federal appeals court has upheld an injunction barring anti-abortion activists from distributing secret recordings of abortion providers and their employees. part of a set of recordings targeting Planned Parenthood and abortion providers. The appeals court decision came one day after California Attorney General Xavier Becerra announced criminal charges against two of the abortion activists involved for allegedly violating state laws against the recording of confidential conversations. The National Abortion Federation obtained the injunction from a federal judge in San Francisco after arguing that the activists violated written agreements they signed pledging not to distribute any information from the meetings without the Federation's consent. The abortion providers also contended that release of videos by the group led to threats and violence, and that the videos were obtained under false pretenses. The court's majority noted that the injunction doesn't flatly prohibit disclosure to law enforcement, but requires use of a subpoena and gives the Federation an opportunity to contest any such transfer.
On Wednesday, Arab leaders reaffirmed their commitment to a two-state solution to the decades-long Arab-Israeli conflict. The move comes amid increased unease over the stance of the United States under the new administration of President Donald Trump. When he indicated in February he was open to a one-state solution, Trump rattled Arab and European leaders. The position upended those taken by successive administrations and the international community. Trump later told Reuters in an interview he liked the concept of a two-state solution. He stopped short, however, of reasserting a U.S. commitment to eventual Palestinian statehood, saying he would be satisfied with whatever makes both parties happy.
James Howell is shown in this booking photo from the Santa Monica Police Department after he was arrested with guns and explosives in his car in Santa Monica, California. Howell, from Indiana, was arrested on his way to a Los Angeles area gay pride parade last year after police found 3 assault rifles and potentially explosive chemicals in his car. He's pleaded not guilty to weapons charges. James Wesley Howell was arrested only hours after a gunman killed 49 people at a gay nightclub in Florida, but police said they found no connection between Howell and the Orlando mass shooting.
Police in Portland, Oregon have detained a handful of people during a downtown rally protesting the fatal police shooting of a 17-year-old black teenager. Portland police said a person reported being assaulted by a member of the protest group. The building was locked down and police in riot gear were in and around the building. A Multnomah County grand jury concluded last week that Officer Andrew Hurst was justified in shooting Kenneth Hayes 3 times after police say Hayes reached for his waistband instead of following orders to surrender. Police say protesters blocked traffic and one person set off a flare. The crowd is also upset because they were blocked from city council chambers under a new policy aimed at controlling protests that have brought city business to a near standstill in recent months. There was also a strong police presence inside and outside the building.
According to scientists from Canada and the United States, an asteroid has been observed in Jupiter's orbit, which has been traveling against celestial traffic. The 5th planet from the Sun, Jupiter, is the largest in the solar system, 2.5 times as massive as all the other planets combined. And the gas giant shares its orbit around the Sun with numerous asteroids, one of which apparently journeys around the solar system in reverse, traveling in the opposite direction of Jupiter and all the other planets. Named asteroid 2015 5ZB09, it is the first object ever discovered by scientists to travel backwards while in orbit, and researchers have determined that it's been doing that for approximately 1 million years.
Wednesday marks the deadline put in play by the Trump administration for contractors to submit bids for the first phase of the Mexico border wall. The wall, according to Customs and Border Protection, must meet several guidelines, including that it must be 18 to 30 feet high and extend at least 6 feet underground to block tunnels. Additionally, the wall should be difficult to climb while also being aesthetically pleasing on the U.S. side. According to CBS News, the first 48 miles of the wall is scheduled to go up in San Diego and along the Rio Grande.
The Philippine Department of Education is pushing for a campaign promoting healthy diet among school children and teachers. A memorandum released earlier this month will ban the selling and marketing of unhealthy food and drinks in all public elementary and high schools in the Philippines. Fat-laden, sugary, and salty foods and beverages in the schools' canteens are also prohibited. The department will also bar endorsements of such foods in schools. This includes advertisements on vending machines, sponsorship of school events, and giving away vouchers as educational rewards. Part of the campaign is also ensuring that every public school will develop its own healthy menu that offers nutritious and affordable food and drinks. A nationwide nutrition survey in 2014 showed that 29% of children aged 5 to 10 years old were underweight, 29.9% were stunted, and 9.1% were overweight. The order will be implemented in 3 months when the new academic year opens. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
Sources have told Politico that a supervisor at the Energy Department's International Climate Office told staff this week not to use the phrases climate change, emissions reduction, or Paris Agreement in written memos, briefings, or other written communications. Employees of the Office of International Climate and Clean Energy learned of the ban at a meeting Tuesday, the same day President Donald Trump signed an executive order to reverse most of former Barack Obama's climate regulatory initiatives. Officials at the State Department and in other DOE offices said they had not been given a banned words list, but they had started avoiding climate-related terms in their memos and briefings, given the new administration's direction on climate change.
Environmental groups that vowed to fight President Donald Trump's efforts to curb preventive measures against global warming made good on their promise Wednesday. Some groups teamed up with an American Indian tribe to ask a federal court to block an order that lifts restrictions on coal sales from federal lands. The Interior Department last year placed a moratorium on new coal leases on federal lands. The decision came after a review on the climate change impacts of burning the fuel and whether taxpayers were getting a fair return.
2 black women who work at Fox News have charged in a lawsuit that they were subjected to years-long relentless racial hostility at the hands of a top financial executive at the network who has since been fired. Tashana Brown and Tabrice Wright, who sued this week in New York State Supreme Court in the Bronx, said their boss humiliated them by making them repeat words she believes black people pronounce incorrectly and mock the Black Lives Matter movement. Fox said there was no place at the network for such inappropriate remarks and fired the executive involved, Judith Slater, on February 28th.
A call for change. These protesters in French Guiana say they've had enough of high unemployment and crime. They've called a general strike, blocking roads and closing many businesses in the capital.
It's a peaceful movement, contrary to what has been said. There are a lot of demands. The violence that Guyana has been enduring has brought many things that just aren't right.
We are here with an economy that doesn't work, with so many problems that have never been solved.
This territory in South America has the highest murder rate among France's overseas regions. Locals say they have it much worse than those on the mainland. Many of the 250,000 people who live there don't have clean water or electricity. Half the youth population is out of work.
I'm here to represent my society and my daughter, who in a few years will be affected by the instability and everything that doesn't work.
One of the main organizers of the movement is a group known as the 500 Brothers. They say they will only negotiate with a minister in the French government. On Wednesday, they get their chance. 2 ministers have been sent for direct talks with the protesters. The crisis has also become a focal point in the French presidential election.
The key answer is to have a real economic policy, a real education policy, a true security policy in Guyana. This is what I want to do.
For the people of French Guyana, away from international attention, they hope whoever wins the election will be able to address their demands. Whitney Hurst, Al Jazeera.
CNN reports that according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in 2015, 52,404 people died from drug overdoses. 63% of those deaths involved an opioid. More people die from drug overdoses than from guns or car accidents. Furthermore, since 1999, the number of overdoses from prescription opioids like oxycodone and hydrocodone as well as illicit drugs like heroin, have quadrupled. Now, a new study in the Journal of JAMA Psychiatry looks beyond the total number of overdose deaths to get a better picture of how heroin use patterns have changed since 2001. Since then, the number of people who have used heroin has increased almost fivefold, and the number of people who abuse heroin has approximately tripled. The greatest increases in use occurred among white males.
Edgar Valleza, Attorney General of Mexico's Pacific Coast state of Nayarit, was arrested in San Diego on U.S. narcotics trafficking conspiracy charges. He has served as the top law enforcement officer of Nayarit since 2013. He was charged in a 3-count indictment returned by a federal grand jury. He was taken into custody Monday by agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and Homeland Security. Nayarit has been hit hard by drug cartel violence in recent years. The arrest is another blow for Mexico President Enrique Peña Nieto's Institutional Revolutionary Party.
A mind-reading computer sends signals to a man's paralyzed arm to make it move. Bill Kochevar became paralyzed from his shoulders down after crashing his bike. He is believed to be the first quadriplegic to have his arm and hand movements restored with the help of 2 implanted technologies. He had 2 electrodes implanted under his skull and 36 sensors in his forearm. For the last 8 years, when Kochevar sent signals from his brain to move a limb, nothing happened. But with this technology, his thoughts are relayed to a computer. The computer sends signals to the sensors, and the sensors stimulate the muscles in his arm and hand to respond, reconnecting his brain to paralysed muscles. Kochevar told The Guardian, quote, "I think about what I want to do and the system does it for me." The study was published March 28th in the journal The Lancet. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
On Wednesday, a Native American tribe in the state of Montana filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump's administration, challenging a White House decision to lift a ban on coal leases on public land without consulting tribal leaders. In its filing, the Northern Cheyenne tribe says that Trump's administration lifted the ban without hearing concerns from the group about the impact the coal leases has on tribe members and the land itself. Tribal Chairman Jake Kilsback said this week it is alarming and unacceptable for the United States to sign up for many decades of harmful coal mining near and around our homeland without first consulting with our nation.
The U.S. Census Bureau has revealed that it will not ask about sexual orientation or gender identity on the 2020 census. The Bureau originally released a list of proposed subjects for the 2020 census that included the subject sexual orientation and gender identity. But the subject was absent from the final draft submitted to Congress on March 28th. The Bureau said that it had been included inadvertently. The census is conducted every 10 years. It asks a variety of questions, but has never before asked about sexual orientation or gender identity. Same-sex partners were first tracked in the 1990 census, and the Bureau began recognizing legally married same-sex couples in 2014. LGBTQ activists have been pushing for the question's inclusion for years. The CEO of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation told Out magazine the move was an effort by the Trump administration to, quote, erase LGBT people. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
1,000 new cholera cases are being registered across Somalia every day. Children are the most vulnerable to the disease, which is both curable and preventable.
This is a major disease outbreak that the country is facing, especially the southern regions. It's 3 times more than we had in 2015, and we already have in 3 months more than we had the past year alone. So right now, all the efforts are being concentrated to avert a further spread of the disease. It's really the top priority to save lives.
Aid groups are already scrambling to help people suffering from a severe drought, mass malnutrition, and facing famine. Somalia has declared a state of emergency with nearly 3 million people affected. Without access to clean water, people are searching for whatever water they can find. Some is filthy, contaminated with diseases like cholera. The United Nations says it's only raised about a third of the $864 million it says it needs to tackle the crisis. The European Union is sending money and expertise. This hospital is saving lives, but hundreds of other people have died from cholera this year. it's hard to get to everyone in need.
Challenge we have is definitely the problem of access for the people to the different services that can be provided, and also for us to access the people and to better understand what is going on in the different areas of Somalia. That goes from access limited by security situations to access limited by roads that are not so good, and that in the rain season will possibly get worse.
Given the resources, it is possible to end the cholera outbreak and limit the effects of drought. If not, the UN says many more children will get sick and die. Caroline Malone, Al Jazeera.
The United States boycotted the start of negotiations at the United Nations March 27th aimed at creating a treaty to outlaw nuclear weapons. The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, said she supports a world without nuclear weapons, but argued that now was not the time to ban them, citing potential threats from other countries. She went on to ask, is there anyone that believes that North Korea would agree to a ban on nuclear weapons? The U.S. is not alone in opposing the prohibition. Britain and France are boycotting the talks as well, while Russia and China were absent. Meanwhile, at least 113 countries are participating in treaty discussions. Proponents of the ban include Pope Francis and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Despite opposition, diplomats announced plans to move ahead with a draft document this spring. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
New research suggests that phytoplankton is blooming in Arctic waters below sea ice. Due to rising temperatures in the Arctic, skylights are forming in sea ice that allow sunlight to pass through the ice and into the waters below. With similar conditions covering 30% of the ice-covered Arctic Ocean, microalgae is booming as a result. But the team of researchers were stunned to discover a sprawling bloom of the microscopic plants. But sea ice has thinned as average annual temperatures continue to rise. The researchers found that meltwater pools on top of the ice that allow light to pass through are becoming more prevalent.
For the people coming and going outside the European Commission, Wednesday may have seemed like an ordinary day. But in every other sense, it was like no other. 9 months after the British voted to leave the EU, the institution has received formal notification of the UK government's intentions.
There is no reason to pretend that this is a happy day, neither in Brussels nor in London. After all, most Europeans, including almost half the British voters, wish that we would stay together, not drift apart.
Ahead lie months of negotiations, with both sides not wanting to reveal too much now of what their positions will be. Germany's Chancellor has spoken of her desire for the UK and the EU to remain close partners, but also that there cannot be parallel talks about trade deals alongside those concerning the terms of Brexit. At the heart of the EU's treaties is its historic commitment to an ever closer union. Monuments to the founding fathers are not hard to find in Brussels' EU quarter, and some believe European unity is now needed more than ever.
The old European Union, the so-called intergovernmental European Union, is dead, doesn't work anymore. It's not equipped for the 21st century, so now we need to move into a political union that is equipped to respond adequately, flexibly, quickly.
Months of negotiations now lie ahead for both parties, and while it's not clear whether their positions during those talks might change, one thing is certain. In the not too distant future, Britain's place in the EU will be gone. Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera, Brussels.
Warning any barriers to trade could risk the future of car plants and ground flights between the UK and the continent. Car makers and airlines EasyJet and Ryanair demanded Britain secure a Brexit deal which preserves their access to Europe. Saying tariffs would raise costs and hit consumers, Britain's car industry body said on Wednesday, after Theresa May formally launched divorce proceedings from the European Union, no deal in Brexit talks is not an option. Ford, Britain's biggest automotive engine maker, and Rolls-Royce and Mini maker BMW both warned that unfettered access to the European Union remained crucial